The town of Dunwich clung to the eroding cliffs. It was a place of perpetual grey. Rain-slicked cobbles reflected the bruised sky, salt-laced winds whispered tales of drowned sailors. Alistair Finch, an artist of meagre renown, resided here. He found its melancholy strangely fitting. His own spirits were often as dismal as the North Sea gales. He felt the town's gloom seep into his very bones. It was a companion to his solitude, a mirror to his fading hopes. His attic studio was his only true sanctuary. It was a cramped, cold space beneath the eaves. Dust motes danced in the thin light from a single grimy window. Canvases, mostly unfinished, leaned against every wall. They depicted scenes of urban decay, of desolate shores. The smell of turpentine and damp plaster was ever present. Here, Alistair wrestled with his muse, a fickle and often absent companion. He poured his frustrations onto the canvas, each brushstroke a sigh. Across the narrow street, a particularly malevolent stone gargoyle perched. It was a hunched, leering thing on the crumbling parapet of an abandoned chapel. Its stony eyes seemed fixed upon Alistair's window. He often felt its oppressive gaze. Was it merely a trick of the light, or did its expression shift with the fading day? He tried to ignore it, yet it became a silent, unwelcome observer of his daily struggles, a grotesque guardian of his despair. The gargoyle became a fixture in his bleak world. He sometimes sketched it, trying to capture its inherent menace. Its grinning visage mocked his efforts. Its presence was a constant, chilling reminder of the grotesque. Dunwich itself felt ancient, secretive. The gargoyle was but one of its many brooding secrets. Alistair felt an unwilling connection to the stone beast. It was as if they shared the quiet desperation of the forgotten town. Alistair's funds were dwindling. Like the sand through an hourglass, his small inheritance slipped away. Each unsold painting was a fresh stab of disappointment. The vibrant colours he once loved now seemed garish. His palette had grown muted, reflecting the shadows in his soul. He needed a sale. He needed recognition. More than anything, he needed a flicker of hope in the encroaching darkness. His art was his lifeblood, but it was failing to sustain him. His agent, Mr. Silas Blackwood, was a man of sharp suits and sharper words. Blackwood's office was in the more prosperous part of Dunwich, far from Alistair's grim attic. Their meeting was scheduled for late afternoon. Alistair clutched his portfolio, his hands clammy. He rehearsed his pleas, his justifications for his recent darker work. He knew Blackwood preferred cheerful pastorals, the kind that sold easily to tourists. His heart hammered a nervous rhythm against his ribs. The meeting was brief, brutal. Blackwood barely glanced at the new pieces. "My dear Finch," he drawled, his voice devoid of warmth, "this is morbid." He tapped a skeletal finger on a depiction of a storm-racked coastline. "No one wants this gloom hanging in their drawing room. It simply will not do." The words were a death knell to Alistair's already fragile confidence. The rejection felt absolute, a final closing of a door he had desperately tried to keep open. Alistair left Blackwood's office in a daze. The agent's dismissal echoed in his mind. The city lights seemed to blur. His steps were heavy, each one an effort. The weight of unsold dreams pressed down upon him. He felt an overwhelming urge to disappear into the Dunwich fog. The familiar taste of failure was bitter on his tongue. Tonight, the gloom of Dunwich was not just a backdrop. It was his very essence. He felt utterly, hopelessly alone. Seeking some small solace, Alistair found himself drawn to the Mariner's Rest. It was an ancient pub, tucked away in a labyrinth of narrow alleyways near the harbour. Its timbers were black with age and sea salt. Inside, a smoky fire crackled in the hearth. The air was thick with the smell of ale, tobacco and fried fish. It offered a temporary refuge from the biting wind and his own biting thoughts. The low murmur of conversation was a balm to his frayed nerves. Mr. Josiah Grimshaw, the pub's owner, greeted him with a kindly nod. Grimshaw was a stout man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen many storms, both literal and metaphorical. He poured Alistair a pint of dark ale without a word. He had a knack for sensing a customer's mood. "Long day, Mr. Finch?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. Alistair merely nodded, unable to articulate the depth of his despair. The warmth of the pub began to thaw his chilled spirit just a little. They spoke for a while. Grimshaw listened patiently as Alistair recounted Blackwood's harsh words. The old pub owner offered no easy platitudes. Instead, he spoke of perseverance, of the unpredictable tides of fortune. "Art's a hard mistress, lad," Grimshaw said, polishing a glass. "But a true one if your heart's in it." His simple wisdom was a small comfort. It didn't change Alistair's circumstances, but it made him feel less isolated in his failure. A distant foghorn moaned from the harbour, a mournful sound echoing the city's somberness. As closing time approached, the fog outside had thickened considerably. It swirled like a living thing, pressing against the pub's leaded windows. "Nasty night to be out alone," Grimshaw remarked, peering into the gloom. "My way home takes me past your turning, Mr. Finch. Happy to walk with you." Alistair, grateful for the company, readily accepted. Together, they stepped out into the cold, swirling embrace of the Dunwich fog, the pub's warm light quickly swallowed by the oppressive darkness. They chose Tanner's Alley as a shortcut. It was a narrow, winding passage between tall, dark warehouses. The fog was denser here, muffling their footsteps on the slick cobbles. Gas lamps cast feeble, isolated pools of orange light. Shadows writhed and danced at the periphery of their vision. An unnatural stillness hung in the air, broken only by the faint, rhythmic drip of water from a leaking pipe. Alistair felt a prickle of unease, the hairs on the back of his neck rising. A sound cut through the silence, a dry, scraping noise, like stone grinding against stone. It seemed to come from the rooftops above, hidden by the fog. Grimshaw paused, his head tilted. "Rats, likely," he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. But the sound came again, closer this time, heavier. It was accompanied by a soft, almost inaudible chittering. The air grew colder, the silence more profound, more menacing. Then it descended. A monstrous shape detached itself from the swirling miasma above. It was not the gargoyle from the chapel, but another more terrible. Wings like tattered leather blotted out the faint lamplight, eyes like burning embers fixed upon them. A low, guttural snarl ripped through the night. Grimshaw pushed Alistair back, shouting a warning. The creature moved with terrifying speed, its talons extended, a screech tearing from its stone throat. It was a nightmare given form. The attack was swift, brutal. Alistair saw Grimshaw fall, a choked scream cut short. The creature loomed over the fallen pub owner, its silhouette monstrous against the faint glow of the distant street. Alistair, frozen in terror, could only stare. The alley reeked of damp stone and something else, something ancient and foul. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the core, that he was next. Death had come on silent, stony wings. Alistair scrambled backwards, his feet slipping on the wet cobblestones. He was trapped. The creature turned its burning gaze upon him. Its face was a grotesque parody of the human form, all sharp angles and deeply shadowed hollows. It advanced slowly, deliberately, its heavy claws clicking on the stones. He could feel its cold breath, a charnel miasma that smelt of ancient dust and decay. His mind screamed for escape, but his limbs were leaden with terror. He was utterly at its mercy. Then it spoke. Its voice was not a sound but a vibration in his skull, a rasping, ancient whisper that bypassed his ears entirely. "You saw nothing." The command was absolute, chilling. "You speak of this to no one." Alistair, trembling, could only nod, his throat too tight for words. The creature's eyes bored into him, searching for any sign of defiance. He knew it could crush him in an instant. Survival, it seemed, had a steep price. "Swear it," the voice insisted, harder this time, like millstones grinding. Alistair finally found his voice, a hoarse whisper. "I swear," he choked out. "I swear I saw nothing. I will tell no one." The words felt like a betrayal, a desecration of poor Grimshaw's memory, but the instinct to live was overwhelmingly strong. He closed his eyes, bracing for the inevitable. He felt a cold, sharp pain sear across his chest, a single deep scratch. When he dared to open his eyes, the creature was gone, vanished back into the fog as silently as it had appeared. The alley was quiet again, save for the dripping water and his own ragged breathing. Josiah Grimshaw lay still and broken on the cobbles. Alistair touched his chest. Blood seeped from a deep, deliberate gash just above his heart. A mark. A seal. A constant burning reminder of the bargain he had made in the heart of the terrifying Dunwich night. The days that followed were a blur of fear and suppressed grief. Alistair reported Grimshaw's death as a tragic accident, a fall in the fog. The police were, well, perfunctory in their investigation. Dunwich had its share of unexplained incidents. The secret of the gargoyle festered within him, a cancerous growth on his soul. He tried to paint, but his hands shook. The mark on his chest throbbed, a dull ache that never truly subsided. He was a changed man, haunted by what he had seen and by what he had sworn. Then Elara appeared. He met her at a small local art exhibition, one he had almost not attended. She was tall, elegant, with eyes the colour of a stormy sea and hair as black as a raven's wing. There was an air of timeless mystery about her. She moved with a quiet grace that captivated him instantly. She paused before one of his newer, darker canvases, a piece inspired by the oppressive atmosphere of Tanner's Alley, though devoid of any monstrous figures. She seemed to understand its hidden depths. "Your work speaks of profound truths, Mr. Finch," she said, her voice low and melodious. It was a sound that seemed to soothe the raw edges of his terror. He found himself drawn to her calm, enigmatic presence. They talked for hours that evening. She spoke little of herself, yet seemed to understand him completely. For the first time since that horrific night, Alistair felt a flicker of something other than dread. A fragile, hesitant hope. Almost overnight, Alistair's fortunes began to change. A wealthy collector, an acquaintance of Elara's, purchased several of his paintings. Commissions followed. Critics, who had previously ignored him, began to write glowing reviews. His name started to appear in art journals. It was as if Elara's arrival had heralded a new dawn. He owed it all to her, he felt. His gratitude and his fascination with her deepened with each passing day. The darkness had not vanished, but it was now held at bay by her luminous presence. Alistair and Elara married within the year. Their life together was one of comfort and acclaim. Dunwich, once a symbol of his despair, now felt like a kingdom over which he reigned, his art its crown jewel. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, both possessing their mother's dark hair and unsettlingly perceptive eyes. His studio, once cold and barren, was now filled with light and the vibrant colours of success. He painted prolifically, his work sought after, his name renowned. Yet beneath the surface of this idyllic existence, the secret gnawed at him. The scar on his chest remained, a physical testament to his vow. Sometimes, in the dead of night, he would trace its outline, the memory of the gargoyle's cold touch sending shivers down his spine. He never spoke of it, not even to Elara. How could he? The fear of breaking his oath, of the consequences that might follow, was a constant, silent companion. He sometimes thought he heard a faint, stone-like rasping sound from the children's room as they slept, but dismissed it as an overactive imagination. Elara herself remained an enigma, beautiful, loving, supportive. Yet there was always a part of her held in reserve, a shadowed depth he could never quite penetrate. The children, too, were different. They were quiet, preternaturally observant, and possessed a strange affinity for the old, crumbling architecture of Dunwich. They would spend hours staring at the gargoyles adorning the town's ancient buildings, their expressions unreadable. Alistair pushed these unsettling thoughts aside, clinging to the happiness she had brought him. The years passed, 5, then 10. The 10th anniversary of their first meeting, the night his fortunes changed, approached. The weight of his silence had become almost unbearable. He longed to confide in Elara, to share the burden of that terrible night. He reasoned that so much time had passed, surely the danger was gone. Surely the creature, if it even remembered him, would not care now. He convinced himself that confessing would free him, would make their happiness complete, untainted by secrets. The evening of their 10th anniversary was meant to be a celebration. Alistair had arranged a private dinner in their grand dining room. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the rich tapestries. Ilara looked radiant, her dark eyes full of affection. The children, dressed in their finest, sat quietly, their gazes fixed on their father. A sense of anticipation hung in the air. But for Alistair it was an anticipation laced with a growing, reckless resolve. He could bear the silence no longer. After the meal, fortified by wine and a desperate need for absolution, Alistair began to speak. "My dearest Ilara," he started, his voice trembling slightly, "there is something I must tell you. Something I should have told you long ago." He recounted the events of that foggy night in Tanner's Alley. The attack, poor Grimshaw's death, the monstrous gargoyle, the vow of silence he had been forced to make, the scar he bore as a reminder. He confessed it all, the words tumbling out in a torrent of long-suppressed fear and guilt. As he spoke, a change came over Ilara. Her smile faded, replaced by an expression he had never seen before. It was cold, ancient, and utterly terrifying. Her skin, once so smooth and pale, seemed to harden, to take on a grey, stony texture. Her eyes began to glow with a faint, malevolent light, like the embers he remembered from the alley. A low, guttural growl like shifting rock emanated from her throat. The children too were changing, their small hands curled into claws, their features sharpening, their skin cracking like old stone. "You swore an oath, Alistair," Ilara said, her voice no longer melodious, but a dry, rasping whisper, the voice of the gargoyle from his nightmares. "You swore silence." The children rose from their chairs, their movements stiff, unnatural. Their eyes, now fully luminous, fixed on him with predatory hunger. The warmth of the dining room had vanished, replaced by an icy chill. The horrifying truth crashed down upon him. His wife, his children, they were not human. They were of the same monstrous kin as the creature from the alley. His idyllic life had been a carefully constructed lie. Panic seized Alistair. He stumbled back, knocking over his chair. The room seemed to shrink around him. The faces of his wife and children, once beloved, were now masks of ancient stone, imbued with a terrifying alien intelligence. He saw no love in their glowing eyes, only a cold, possessive hunger. His confession had not brought freedom, but damnation. He had broken his vow, and the price was to be paid in full. He had invited the monsters into his home, into his heart. He tried to flee. He turned towards the door, but his path was blocked. Ilara, no, the thing that wore her shape, moved with an unnerving, stony grace. Her touch was like ice, her grip like iron. The children flanked her, their small, transformed bodies exuding an aura of immense, ancient power. The air filled with the sound of cracking stone and a low, continuous growling. There was no escape. He was trapped in his gilded cage, the bars now revealed to be cold, unyielding stone. His screams were swallowed by the oppressive silence of the grand house. What happened next, Alistair could never truly recall, if indeed he was capable of recall. There was pain, a chilling cold that seeped into his bones, a petrifying transformation. His life, his art, his love, all extinguished, all subsumed by the gargoyle's terrible secret. The vibrant artist, Alistair Finch, ceased to exist. His desperate cries for help went unheard, lost in the vast, uncaring darkness that enveloped Dunwich. The city kept its secrets well, guarded by silent, watchful sentinels. Now, on the rooftops of Dunwich, overlooking the grey, churning sea, new figures joined the ancient assembly of stone guardians. Among them, one bore a striking, tragic resemblance to a once promising artist. His family, Ilara and their 2 children, perched beside him, their stony eyes fixed on the town below. They were silent sentinels, eternal watchers. Their forms a chilling testament to a broken vow and a love that was monstrously betrayed. The wind whistles through their stone crevices, a mournful, almost human sigh, carrying the faintest whisper of a name, Alistair. The fog rolls in, as it always does, shrouding the gargoyle's secret once more.